Good evening, and welcome to Those Canadian Lads podcast. Tonight, we're going to enter the political arena to discuss multiple interesting topics that you may or may not find interesting. Our last episode, we covered many topics like baby butter, Rod Stewart, Little Kim, collapsing on stage. Both of these stories ended the same way, with a stomach bump. These conspiracies sat on the false side of the truth. These poor entertainers have been stained with the false truths made up by teenage boys with extremely vivid imaginations. Tonight, we will focus our efforts on all the interesting developments in our current political environment. Things are going swimmingly, don't you think? As you may notice, many of our recent episodes have been deemed shit shows by the hosts. I can clearly assure you, the fine listener, that this episode will also be a shit show. Why not? Let's have some fun with the topic of the day. The topics we will cover tonight will be politics. We will rehash some conspiracy. And we'll dabble a little bit in social media. So join us on this intellectual journey of topics of which we are not experts on. And let's kick off episode 12 of Those Canadian Lads podcast. Geoff, how you doing tonight?
I'm wonderful, Brad, and yourself?
I'm doing pretty good, and we got a special guest tonight, Beau from Saskatchewan, our contributor. He's going to be joining us a little later in the podcast to kind of dive into some topics Politico.
I like that Beau is just going to get relegated to Beau from Saskatchewan. It couldn't possibly be Beau, family man, Beau, but no, Beau from Saskatchewan.
Leader of men.
Leader of men. Yeah, exactly. I do have to say good job on that Alfred Hitchcockian introduction there. That was very calm and collected. I felt the chill coming out of the screen while you were doing it. So well done.
Well, let me say something. The most talked about topic of our podcast last week is the term baby butter. Some people know what it is, some people don't. And it definitely created some intrigue around our podcast last week.
I think, in all honesty, I assumed that was just a term that everybody had grown up with. I really didn't think there was a possibility that you wouldn't have known what I was talking about. But I guess it's the same thing. Is just like, are you going to say that men and women both have a taint? Or is it just men have a taint? Because who knows what we're going to define this to be, right?
What are you talking about?
I don't know.
We're 3 minutes into this podcast and we've already gone off the rails.
Yeah, well, it's probably a good thing before we actually get into the topic of the day in regards to having our guests come on and enlighten us on some ideas.
Not the topic du jour. I do need to talk about the topic du jour before we kind of move into the next steps into the evening's topics. But you need to go check out on Twitter, social media platform, if you didn't know. There was a UFO spotted and filmed by Pakistani pilots, airline pilots. Very clear video of a shiny object flying in the airspace. The one thing that I've been told through the Twitterverse is that they're trying to say that it's the International Space Station. It's not the International Space Station. So it's in clear daylight. It's blue skies. It's big. And you need to check this out.
I will have to check that out. I am woefully disappointed in myself that I am not up to date on my UFO news, apparently. I had not heard that story. I'm going to be digging into that immediately.
It only broke yesterday. So don't beat yourself up.
Okay, I'll try not to flog myself before I go to bed tonight. Okay.
So how you doing, Geoff? Is everything going well in your world?
Everything is adequate. As everybody around the planet knows, we're affected by COVID. Work's affected. Going out is affected. I'm not entirely sure if I brought it up on the last podcast, but I'd seen a commercial for people enjoying a burger and a beer in a pub restaurant, and it is eating away at me. I don't want to bring my food home. I want to go enjoy a burger at a at a restaurant. I'm done.
Oh, just the social aspect of sitting down, having a adult cocktail, eating, a meal in front of other people that's not your, family, that you live with. It's just even sitting up at the bar, watching a hockey game, talking to the guy next to you, right? Like I miss that.
Absolutely. Like I think we're all it's funny. In one breath, I'm not really the most social person. I know I have family members who will refer to me as Grumpy Jeff, and I'm not here to argue with them because they're right. But there is just kind of a being out and about that I am currently missing. That I would like to go do that. But truth be told, currently, I know this is easy for you, and you've already lived a good chunk of your life like this, but I am just wrapping up dry January. Something that I hadn't really done in quite a long time in regards to abstaining for an extended period. I'm not a raging alcoholic, dear listener. I'm just a normal alcoholic. But I will say that it has been a good reset in regards to having a casual beer while watching an Oilers game. Obviously, there was no Oilers games in December, so it was easy to avoid a few bunch of things. But no, for those who are ever considered doing like a 30-day period or a dry January and just kind of avoiding things, and I'll go back to Brad's wonderful discipline that he had from September to December, and abstaining from sugar, and taking care of what he was putting in his body. It's a great reset for your mind, and you feel pretty good at the end of the day for it.
That being said, we talk about alcohol. I have not had a alcoholic beverage since September.
Oh, I listen. Mine, I think Monday's the first. I'm not in Monday. I probably won't have anything. It'll probably get closer to the weekend when I get to finally break out a nice bottle of wine. I can guarantee there will be a nice IPA and an old fashioned enjoyed during the Super Bowl when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers claim their Super Bowl.
Yes, Jeffrey, I've known you a very long time. You are a super fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Why? I do not know. Right? That's a pretty rando team to be a fan of, though I can vouch for you. Meeting you over 20 years ago, were rocking a Tampa Bay Buccaneers jersey. So you have been a loyal fan of that club. Your thoughts on the big championship win against the Green Bay Packers over the weekend? Your Tom Brady is going to his 10th Super Bowl.
It was a wonderful Sunday. I will definitely say that. As in all honesty, I am a betting man. I was not going to put any money on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win that game. I honestly thought Green Bay would pull that out, especially with the home field. But it is obviously, as a long-suffering fan and as Oilers fans, it relates to this as well. But you go this long without any success, and for the Bucs, it was 13 years without a playoff experience. The last playoff win was, in fact, the Super Bowl. So it was quite a while ago. So no, it's definitely refreshing as a fan, and I never had any aspirations that they were going to make it all the way to the Super Bowl, but I am definitely enjoying the ride. I do have one thing to say though. I've had a lot of friends. I've had casual people, and I hear it in the media every day. Oh, I was a Patriots fan, or I'm a Tom Brady fan, and I just really hope the Buccaneers win. Screw you. I have been suffering with this team. I pay to watch this team. I have paid to watch this team for a long time. Why? Because I'm an idiot. But all of a sudden you go, oh, well, I'm cheering for the Bucs. Screw you. That's an insult to me as a fan. I have died watching this team get crushed 12 games a year for as long as I can remember. So I'm enjoying it. You don't enjoy it.
Okay, one, I enjoyed it. I did sit down. I don't currently watch the NFL a lot, and I'm a big sports guy, but the NFL hasn't been my jam. I'm more of a three-down football guy, but I watched the game. I actually got a chance to sneak down to the basement and watch all 4 quarters of a football game uninterrupted, and I liked what I saw. I saw 43-year-old Tom Brady, the greatest of all time in that position, work his magic essentially. I'm rooting for your team, Geoff. I'm hoping they pull through. You're going old school, new school with Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady against each other. It's actually quite an intriguing storyline for a Super Bowl. But I'm not an expert. I don't follow the NFL that much, but I do have to say that it's amazing to watch somebody at their craft, at 43, come into the league as he did, as not a favorite, as not, somebody who is going to be touted as the next Joe Montana. And he surpassed Joe Montana, and there's going to be nobody like
the opportunity to grow that many Super Bowls, that many playoffs, it's impossible. I think Tom probably really appreciates that every time the playoff rolls around, they show that picture of him shirtless at the combine where he looks like a stick man. It's just like,
oh, I know. I saw that the other day, and I'm like, okay, this guy's the greatest of all time. That's amazing. The one thing that really cemented me, just as I watched it, he's savoring the moment. After they won the game, he ran over to the sidelines. His son was at the game, and he needed to connect with him after the game. I'm like, man, that's a pure dad moment. Like, people say like, oh, he's a bad guy. He supported Trump and all that. But right there, I'm like, that's cemented with me. I'm like, that's a guy who loves his family. That's a guy who, the biggest smile on his face, and he wanted to share that moment with his son. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was definitely a good scene, and I know nobody hates the worst person in a league. Like, people dislike Peyton Manning, people dislike Wayne Gretzky. It's because they're fantastic at their jobs. That's what it is. Everyone tries to chop down who is better at us at what they do. But last week we did talk about the positivity that we want to bring into the 21, I think, as you put it, and. There's inspirational stories all around us. And I know it's weird to say, like, well, look at this extremely well-paid athlete and the life he's created for himself by throwing a football around. But you can look at Tom Brady's story and go, yeah, look at this guy was not well touted coming out of college. I think when he first arrived on the Patriots, he may have been the fourth quarterback, if possibly the third. He gets himself into the game, succeeds for his whole career, and plays until he's 43. And I know his goal is to play until he's 45. That's a story on somebody dedicated to his craft and taking care of himself. And we can all look at that for inspiration. It's a good story regardless of your thoughts on Tom Brady.
No, absolutely. And winning away from Bill Belichick, getting the Super Bowl away from essentially that storyline for Tom Brady, just cements him that it was all Tom. There's the team around him, the players that were brought in with the Patriots, things like that. But the quarterback is the best player on the field. If he's not the best player on the field, you're not going to win any football game in the NFL or in the wonderful Canadian Football League.
Absolutely.
That hopefully will return.
I do have a question for you. I do have a question in regards to the CFL for you, but as I mentioned, I'm a betting man. This Super Bowl is going to be, I think the line is 52, maybe it's 57. If you're a fan of offensive football, you're going to probably see a high scoring game. I think it's going to be entertaining for the casual fan. So if you're interested, tune in. It's going to be great. But turning our attention to the CFL really quickly before we get into our conversation with Beau, your thoughts on the Edmonton football team losing their head coach before a down is even played?
Okay, so here's my take. Scott Milanovich, good, pretty touted coach in the CFL. He's had some success with the Toronto Argonauts. How do you blame a guy? They didn't play us down this year. The CFL isn't, paying their coaches millions of dollars a year to coach their teams. If he obviously was brought an opportunity to him to at least interview or be aligned with an NFL coaching gig, be it, offensive coordinator or whatever, or maybe head coach even, who knows?
He's going to be the QB coach for the Indianapolis Colts.
There you go. Good gig. With a great franchise. So, you can't blame him. And if you blame him for trying to make a living for his family, it just COVID, man. COVID times, and things aren't normal. Things have changed. Things are going to keep changing for the way we view sports, the way we interact with sports. I just really hope we can get this bloody vaccine into our arms or eyeballs or whatever they're going to put it. And so we can get out there and start enjoying the things that we love again. And for me, it is sports. I can't wait to take my family to Commonwealth Stadium and get them the experience of an Edmonton football team football game. And I can't wait till they release a name, because that's awkward to say and terrible.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a name getting thrown on there as well. But no, I couldn't agree with you anymore. Quite frankly, Scott's got to go out and earn for his family, earn for his own livelihood, probably his own peace of mind as well. And if an opportunity comes along where you get to go coach in the NFL, and the Colts are going to be moving on to a new quarterback with Phillip Rivers retiring, whether it be Brissett or they draft somebody, he's going to have the opportunity to help mold a career. And I think if you're a coach in any capacity, that's probably what you're hoping to do. You're hoping to make another individual better than they once were. So I wish him all the best.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into some further conversations about our local football team and the league that I know you have interest in the sense that you have gone to multiple Grey Cups and things like that. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about the Canadian Football League on those Canadian Lads podcast. But Geoff, we really need to segue. Beau is waiting in the wings. We need to get going on the Politico topic at hand, the political rodeo episode of those Canadian Lads. Is there anything you want to touch on before we bring Beau into the conversation?
No, let's do it.
All right, let's move on. Let's bring Beau into the conversation. Beau, welcome to Those Canadian Lads podcast. Of course, episode 12, the political rodeo. I need to touch on something before we start. So Beau was last on episode 6, so we can obviously expect him back on episode 18. But let's just let's just note on something here. So
wait. So if it goes in divisions of 6, are we saying that Beau is 666?
The devil.
Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. So we're gonna give Beau some props here. So episode 6 is currently our most listened to episode. So Beau, congratulations. You're on the most listened to episode of Those Canadian Lads podcast.
Well, thanks, Brad and Geoff. I'm glad to be back. And, episode 6 was mid-December. Lots has happened since we've had that episode. We got a new president down south, and we're still in the thick of COVID. Just lots going on, lots to talk about tonight. And I'm pumped to be back. So.
Well, you say something interesting. You say we have a new president. We aren't currently a part of the United States of America.
Wow.
So you're
Good
kind
point.
of showing your cards a little bit tonight, Beau Johnston.
That's right.
I shouldn't say your last name.
Someone's got a new president. We
I'll
still have the same government we always did, but I obviously I think we have to give props to Beau for the increased listenership. Obviously, you have lots of friends and family that care about what you have to say, Beau. So yeah, thank you for turning them on to the podcast.
So Beau, just a question to you before we kind of get rolling on the topics. What kind of feedback were you getting, and when can we expect the Sasky Roundtable podcast invite?
Well, the feedback was good. I actually had quite a few people I know that listened to it. They enjoyed the podcast. They actually, I don't think I had a negative feedback on any of it. I think everyone liked it and enjoyed it. As far as my podcast, it's a good question. I ever since just after Christmas here, I've just been kind of a bit more trying to check out a bit. So that podcast, it should still happen. I'm just not quite where I need to be yet. I want to just kind of get through these winter months, get a little more refreshed with spring, and then maybe this Sasky Roundtable fires up.
That sounds like a good excuse, and you're just delaying the inevitable. So
possibly.
So tonight is the political rodeo. It's our second part of this series that we seem to have every 6 episodes. So maybe we'll tie the devil into the series 6, like Geoff mentioned earlier. But I'm excited to talk tonight. Obviously, we touched on conspiracies last go around on Those Canadian Lads, but I think there's a real nice connection. Obviously, tying in politics, conspiracies, and a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world these days. So, maybe let's get started with some of the topics that we want to cover. I'll get started, to be honest with you, because I've got some notes taken down here. And one of the things I wanted to touch on is a news story that I think all three of us have seen. But Rebel News reporter Keenan Bexty, or whatever his name is, he was visited by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police at his home in Calgary because he would release some sensitive documents related to COVID-19 that, from what he says, embarrasses the Prime Minister of Canada. Now, maybe I'll let Geoff jump in here first. Geoff, you watched that video. You kind of took a look at what I was sending you there the other night. What's your thoughts?
Well, I'm gonna back up a little bit because I'm not gonna play my hand necessarily yet because I know that's what you're after here. But I guess the first question, I'll ask you guys to elaborate upon the story, upon the video. The generality of it, from what I watched and saw, was this reporter for Rebel Media had released a Department of Defense memo, effectively from January 22nd, 2020, saying that the armed forces that traveled to Wuhan, China, and participated in the military games were potentially exposed to the COVID virus. Nothing too shocking there. And then because of that release of information, he was visited by the RCMP, who more or less said to him, be careful what you're putting out there. Is that a fair assessment of what the story is?
Pretty close. Yeah.
Okay.
In general, that's it. He didn't do anything illegal, I don't think, is what I understood. It was the information was given to him, from the government, from a request. He put it out there, and according to Kean, the RCMP showed up and basically said, just be careful. Now, Brad, I think you've seen the video. Would you add any to that, or?
So I was actually quite more taken with the memo and what it says, in the sense that the government knew about this coronavirus before March. They had obviously Canadian soldiers exposed to it in 2019. Geoff's giving me a look there.
I think the timeline's a little off, man.
I don't know if it is or not. That states 2019. They were there for some world games, Patriot games or whatever they're called, and then these people were exposed to it. And we continue to have borders open. We continue to allow the China virus, which is now banned in the United States by President Joe Biden, the term, because it's racist. It did originate there.
Brad, I think you touched on something really critical there. Not only whether that's true or not, that they were infected with the China virus, but the intentions.
COVID-19. I was joking.
You call it whatever you want.
COVID-19.
I'm not PC, so.
But at the end of the day, you're right. China flights didn't stop. The border never ever closed from Wuhan. There was flights coming in the whole time. There's never been a shutting of the flights. And I would agree with you, Brad. I think the timeline is very questionable.
Okay, so I'll bring up my thoughts on the timeline. You're saying that the Canadian government acknowledged the coronavirus in March. Well, I can speak from personal.
Things wrapped up in March. I'm not saying they acknowledged it in March, but that's when everything started to really ramp up, right?
Well, I'm going to go in a little bit of personal history. And you're right, there was a ramping up period about this. But when I traveled to Hawaii on February 8th last year, I was asked if I'd been to China in the last 2 weeks. So this wasn't
I traveled through the country as well.
I know, but that's what I'm saying, though. It wasn't on the radar in March, and governments have already acknowledged they knew in October and November. So it's just like, oh no, a Canadian memo from January 22nd. Well, yeah, we already knew about it. It was well advertised.
I'm not sure what the argument is. I think the argument here is I agree. I think the Canadian government and a lot of these governments knew about it months before it was ever even really told to the people.
Yeah, and I think is it fair to say that we all agree that probably no government knew what they were up against when it came to this?
Well, all depends, Jeff, if you want to pretend that everyone's playing legit, or if you want to tie this to the if you want to tie this to the Great Reset, then they obviously knew exactly what they were doing. So it depends where you want to spend it.
Somewhere. Now we're getting somewhere. We're getting to that place where I want to be tonight.
Yeah.
This is like, we've got some factual documents. Now we're tying it to that conspiracy theory in the Great Reset. And it's interesting, these topics. So I'm going to say this: the Rebel News. I know, Beau, you believe in it. You think it's a
well. If I could give my 2 cents on Rebel, I personally like Rebel. I know that they come across a bit brash and a bit to the right, but I do believe Rebel is giving us the other side of the story. And I mean, just like any media now, it has its bias. But here in Canada, we are absolutely starved of the other side of the story. And I think Ezra and the Rebel right now, we need them more than ever. I mean, yeah, is every story perfect? Maybe not. Is every reporter for the Rebel the best to watch? No, but in general, I think the Rebel is needed today more than it has ever been needed. And True North is the same, and Post Millennial is the same. These independent medias, to me, are there, and Trudeau's coming for them. He is coming for them. These medias may not even be here in 6 months. You can see he's coming for them. He wants them shut down. They're a direct threat to that narrative of the government. And there's no question, Ezra, True North, all those private entities, they're in trouble.
Well, it can't be disputed. Like an outlet like the CBC definitely spews left-wing, agenda on a nightly basis. Watching a lot of the stuff come through in our own country took a backseat to the insurrection in the States. Rosie Barton on the nightly news would like wait for the 5th, 6th, 7th news story to like jump into actual Canadian news topics. And we're in the middle of a pandemic. They'd rather touch on Donald Trump and what's going on there. But that being said, back to the Rebel information. It's interesting you say that. Like, I've done some research. I've kind of went back throughout, some of their articles and news stories. Something that just really strikes me is that they are showing things that are very eye-opening in the sense of, why is the mainstream media that we see out there not reporting on this? And, I'll give you an example, is the protests in Toronto just this week.
Huge story.
Huge story. Now, I take everything with a grain of salt too. They were reporting one poor guy was getting a sign taken away, but the sign said, Dr. Tam needs some vitamin D. So I think that was a little out there. But that being said, we live in a free society, freedom of speech, all this kind of good stuff. So I don't know why he couldn't have that sign. On the flip side of it, all the kooks and crazies that are within that group, there are a smattering of people who feel like their rights are being, stepped on by the government. And the police did go a little aggressive on there. And I know in Ontario, they're very, very sensitive right now in regards to their, spike in coronavirus cases and things like that. And they've gone full lockdown. People are ratting each other out in various communities, their neighbors, their fellow neighbor, for, having either somebody visit them or come to their house and all that. Right. So going back to the Rebel News, I would tend to agree with you. It's nice to see some independent viewpoints, just not what we get spewed to us on a nightly basis. So I'm not 100%, saying, hey, Ezra Levant and Keenan Bexty or whatever his name is are our saviors in regards to giving us the full story, because they definitely lean very right. But Brad, they're giving us images of things that we don't get to see on a nightly basis.
Brad, if I could just quickly, I think the CBC, CTV, Global, CNN, the mainstream is no longer even journalistic news. It's just not. If you want to call that journalistic news, it's not. It's just talking points from a script and it's the agenda that the, I guess if you want to call it the propaganda machine for the Liberal government, or that's all it is. It's not, there's no news there. It's just scripted talking points. That's all it is.
Well, I'll ask you guys a question, and I want to go back really quickly on a point Brad made in front of regards to like people are feeling their rights are being trampled on, and obviously here in Alberta we've had predominantly in smaller towns in the province people opening up their restaurants and effectively challenging the status quo when it comes to it. And I'm extremely sympathetic to those who, you know, they put their life savings out there, they put their effort forward, and they're still out there trying to make a living. So I definitely get the frustration. And truth be told, if I was running a restaurant or something like that, I'm not entirely sure what my course of action would be. Maybe I would be doing something similar. So
I want to touch on this because, okay, you and I, Beau, I'm not sure how big of a sports fan. I know you like the knuckle chucking with
UFC,
the MMA. Yeah. But the NHL has been allowed to operate. Mega business. Junior hockey's coming back. Big malls are open. We were in the West Edmonton Mall this weekend. We had to get some stuff for the kids. Stores are open still there. There's a problem here. There's definitely a disconnect with what's going on, because some small restaurant in like Two Hills, Alberta, or Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, we're doing some pretty big damage to people here, and we're allowing the Walmarts and the Costcos, the superstores, they're all profiting hugely.
And Brad, what you're pointing out,
keep open.
What you're pointing out, Brad, is a direct link to, if you want to go back to the conspiracy side, this correlates with the Great Reset again. I mean, all directions are pointing towards. I've said this to you many times. In my opinion, COVID is an engineered crisis. That's it. Does COVID exist? Yes, it probably does. It's a form of a flu. I don't know all the science behind it, but it's got a 99.5% survival rate. That's a fact. Maybe you can round it down to 99 if you want. But when does it make any sense to completely cripple the entire economy over a virus that has a 99% survival rate? It just doesn't. There's nothing about COVID that adds up. And one thing I'd like to touch on, if for you two guys, if after the podcast, maybe I wouldn't feel right talking about it on this one just because not everyone's versed on it, but maybe further down the road. And I think we're going to hear about this, the PCR test that all these provinces are using to use these numbers. I crawled down a little bit of a rabbit hole just lately because I've been reading and listening to a lot of experts that aren't getting any mainstream. This PCR test has all sorts of questions, and lots of people. There's people that were involved with inventing the PCR test have great concerns about the accuracy of it. And this PCR test is being used to determine the numbers of positive cases, and all these rules are coming off those cases.
Well, I will touch on it here because Geoff brought up kind of a similar topic about, governments didn't know how to handle it. The healthcare system, the testing community, they didn't know how to handle it either. It just came out and hit the world, smack in the face. So it's hard to, I don't know, I have a tough time just with, we can criticize and all these kind of things, but it's hard to just throw it out there and say, well, there's an issue with the tests. That makes sense because it's something new. The science maybe it hasn't caught up to make it 100% accurate. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be that devil's advocate a little bit and say, okay, they weren't expecting this. Just like how the vaccine rollout is.
That sounds like a Dr. Tam answer off the CBC.
Oh.
Well, this will give me an excellent opportunity to jump in now. So, Brad brought it up, playing devil's advocate, and truth be told, I'll say my piece and then I'll get on to the next part that I wanted to ask you guys from the before. But you have a situation where we said we've crippled the economy. The economy is undoubtedly affected by what has taken place here, but obviously, places like Walmart, West Edmonton Mall, larger largest business entities have been allowed to operate. Is that possible just due to the fact that they're the largest employers in the province or either province, and they pay the most taxes, and that particularly protects the government and the province to a certain extent?
But they also have the most profit. Walmart can afford to shut down. They have the biggest profit margin too. They can take on the biggest hit without a major. The small business owner, most of them are month to month. Families are invest. They have no sponge to take any kind of damage. Where a Walmart or a Costco, well, I mean, they're those companies. They can take all sorts of hits.
Of course they can, and yeah, no. And as I said, I'm not down that. As I said, I'm still very sympathetic to the small business. Like, I have family members in small business, and I really, obviously, I'm pulling for them to make it out of this as well. But as I said, like from a generalized population perspective, yeah, they can take the hit, but they're also employing the most people, and then allowing those people to pay taxes, and then that company itself generates the most taxes. So there's a self-serving thing with it, of course, with the government, but the government's always self-serving.
But Brad made a good point, is why would one just be targeted? Like, all jobs are essential. I've heard this multiple times with multiple people. For someone to say your job's not essential, it's essential to you because you can't feed your family. All jobs are essential. Everyone needs a job. I mean, if just because you are a waitress, but you got 3 kids at home, and we take you and we don't give you any supplement of an income, and we kill your job, well, that job's pretty essential to that household.
Of course it is, yeah. And I do believe the government should be offsetting those losses.
That's the problem I have, is that we're picking and choosing. We got the bloody Bachelorette coming to Alberta, taking the entire Jasper Park Lodge for like 90 days, which in a good thing, they're going to employ people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah.
But on the bad thing, other businesses are still going to suffer in the hotel industry, in the hospitality industry, because they're not going to be under a complete, bubble, scenario. Right. So I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me that we would shut down every single, restaurant in Alberta, or every single, for eat-in restaurant. You know what I mean? Like, some of these places don't have Skip the Dishes and DoorDash and all these other places that they can pull on to do takeout restaurants.
But you can go and pick it up. Like I said, I don't do Skip the Dishes because that small business gets hit by Skip the Dishes. They take 15%. So I go drive and pick it up myself. Then I'm a
monster because I use Skip the Dishes.
but that's kind of the point, though. It's just like you're saying, oh, well, they can only get their business access this way. That's not true. You can go and get it.
I just want to quickly touch on something. So the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada and the Constitution in the United States, I don't know them both to be an expert by any means, but if I know enough in the last, the Charter has totally been stomped out. The Charter is not being looked at all. The Constitution in the United States, what they did with Trump and Twitter and multiple other things with the election, that thing's been trampled all over. So both documents with the states and Canada that are there to kind of give us our freedom and our reality of our democracy, they've been chucked out the window. They're not even getting looked at. And when you have Calgary graveling your hockey rinks and smashing kids on the hockey rink, this is a brutal in your face, we are in charge mentality. This isn't about a little 90 virus that has a 0.5% kill rate. I mean, there's something else going on here. When you're graveling all the hockey rinks,
that's pretty messed up, by the way. They did sand
that's a message.
Hockey rinks in Calgary.
That's a message. That's a message, Brad and Geoff. That's a message to everybody that, you know what, your charter's gone, your constitution's gone, and the people in power are in power. That this is a message.
So let me ask you a question, Beau. What part of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms has been infringed upon in Canada?
Well, like I said, I'm not an expert, but I mean, the charter, you have the right to assembly. And you can see in Toronto, they're ticketing people for assembly. You have the right to do that. You have churches have the right to practice religion. Manitoba has shut all that down. There's multiple things on the charter that are being infringed. People are being ticketed for things.
I do bring that up. So the protests in Toronto, and there was people getting roughed up quite quite badly actually in that protest this week in Toronto. So only a few months ago, police in Toronto and police across Canada joined mass protests for the BLM movement.
That's right.
Taking knees, which I'm 100% for. Nobody was banging them and saying, don't protest, don't do this. You guys are, super spreader events, things like that. Nobody was questioning that. Well, why is one different than the other in the sense of gathering and protesting? What
I have a definite answer for you.
Tell me.
Everyone's a political hypocrite.
Yes.
Well, that's the right answer.
That's the reason, yeah. I'm going to go back a little bit. I did ask Beau what he thought. Now, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it does allow for the government to intervene on people's rights to a certain extent, as long as they have a plan and an objective in a short-term capacity.
None of that's been done, really. It's just
you could make an argument that the plan and the objective of stomping out COVID is there. Whether or not you agree it's a good plan, and I could poke holes in it too. But they have done that. But the thing is, though, too, is you're right. We pick and choose where we want to apply whatever rules we have. There's a political hypocrisy that goes on with this type of stuff, and depending on what side of the fence you want to sit on, chances are you're going to point out the other side's hypocrisy that it comes to.
Well, actually, this is actually a good lead. I kind of wanted to jump into something else off of this lead. China is big in the news right now. China seems to be, much like the last podcast I was on, I highlighted China. China is going to be a big topic for everyone in North America going forward. And this COVID, just like you're talking about BLM, all this right, left, this is all just dividing this entire nation to the point where it's tearing it apart. And COVID is just another example of this. Is we when you look around, Geoff, I know from the last part, you like to be a centrist. You like to kind of sit right in the middle. And it's very difficult now for anyone to be in the middle. Just because, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being in the middle. I think we need to get back to the middle. But the way we're being pushed and divided on race and gender and COVID. I mean, I listen to Gormley in the morning. I got people phoning in that are absolutely livid that these businesses are getting fined. The next lady calls in and's wild, wants them in jail. There's just one extreme to the other. There's no middle anymore, and it's almost done by design here. We're not going to survive long like this.
Well, I can tell you why I find myself able to kind of sit in the middle is because I've a healthy distrust of everybody and everything I hear. So this will lead me to my question. So we're discussing certain media groups and where you digest your news and how you absorb your information. And this was kind of the main topic last week in regards to conspiracy theories. Why do you guys trust the media outlets that you do as opposed to the others?
Well, I got a quick and easy answer.
Yep, please.
They don't get $1 billion from Trudeau. They're just running on guys like me, giving them $8 a month to try and fund their little private journalism, where the CBC and all them, they're totally fed off the government. If the CBC didn't have our funding, it wouldn't make a week.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that. Yeah.
So those big media entities, to me, those are all when you follow the states and you follow, they all lead up to Disney and Time Warner owning all of them. And then when you find out who's all invested in Time Warner and Disney, it looks like China owns a half of that. So when you follow the money streams and go all the way up to the top, it's pretty quick. You see that they're all tied to the same. And look, China owns half of that too. So you have to ask yourself, that stuff's all, to me, total. It's just a total write-off. Now, Ezra Levant, I see him as a Canadian-loving patriot. Maybe he's a little brash for some. He's a lawyer by trade. I think all those people like Kean and Sheila Gunn, they're just Canadian-loving people that see the country going down the toilet, and they got an outlet to try and show us some good media. Is every story factual? Most likely not, but to me they're way more to me they're way more accurate than Rosie and this. I can't even watch the CBC. I just can't. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
It is pretty. Go, Jeff.
I was gonna say, I think it's funny you guys always bring up the CBC. I don't think anyone watches the CBC, so I don't think you're really taking away into their viewership. But sorry, Brad, go ahead.
Hemanan Singh is crying right now in his pants.
I get where there's a healthy skepticism coming from. For, like I said, follow the money. There is totally legit. You do have,
and you go back to it, like Jeff. I'm cynical too. Like, I know Fox News is bullshit, and I know CNN's bullshit, and I know the CBC's bullshit, and I know CTV's bullshit. It's all bullshit. And, it's nice to see some, like, when you do get, like, something that's really, like, catches you off guard, it's like, oh, shit. Like, why is this not on the news cycle? Like, because either it's not sitting within that political spectrum, or, I don't know. It's biased. It's so biased. It's propaganda, and it's entertainment for people as well.
But the baby boomer generation that grew up on it, they're totally cooked by it.
And that's a perfect segue, because that's something I wanted you to bring up with Jeff. You've introduced it to me. It's a book called Boomers, Jeff, and it talks about the boomer generation and their impact on our society and what we're dealing with right now as well.
I obviously didn't buy the book yet or read it, but I was watching.
You can't give a book review if you haven't read it.
No, hang on.
Book review. It seems like an interesting book to read, though.
Brad went a little far on me there, but anyways, the story to it was.
Beau's an expert on this, by the way. So
I was watching and listening to one of my other favorite guys, Steve Bannon, and he had a.
He got pardoned.
I know he did. And
was it Nas, or who got pardoned?
Lil Wayne and Kodak Black.
And Steve had this writer on, Helen Andrews, and she had wrote a book, Boomers it's called, and the title is The Men and Women who were supposed to deliver freedom and delivered disaster. So that caught me at guard, that it was, here's a heavy critique of the boomers. And I did happen to YouTube a few of her interviews about the book. And I don't really want to dive too deep into it, because she touches on a lot of things. She does critique the boomer generation in a lot of ways. And I think it's worth, someone who's interested in it, maybe looking at the book or watching some YouTube. But one thing she pointed out about the boomers is that they were such a massive amount of people that for the last 50 years, everything has revolved around them, everything. And she goes into great detail about kind of how the boomers, did a bit of damage to culture, like, the church, more of a family oriented culture. And I just want to touch on those things, because like I said, I haven't read the book and I don't want to get carried away like I actually know every detail, but
we should do a book club. We should really do a book club. Those Canadian book club.
I think you knock out like 25, 30 books a year. So I'm totally in for it. So.
Yeah. I'm down for that. I think this would be a good read. I did a little research on it last night, and to be honest with you, it's kind of spoke to me in the sense that, that full generation of people, they went through a lot of stuff and they changed the world essentially, right? Right from, our viewpoint of television and being attentive to things, drug use, throughout their generation, right? Beau was talking to me about that yesterday, about how, they went from, a society with, really little to no drug use to, dabbling in marijuana. And then when the money came in the 80s, everybody was blowing rails like Rick James, right? So,
and one thing, like, if we look at the world today, like we've been talking, how things kind of seem way off the rails. Like, to me, they seem way off the rails. You have to almost start to look at, who's been driving the ship for the last 40, 50 years. I'm a Gen Xer. You guys are Gen X, or, and I mean, Gen X hasn't been really driving the train. We're a small generation to boot. The millennials would be the next ones that really get a helm at it. But so the boomers have been driving the ship for 50 some years here. I mean, even with Trump and Biden, they're both technically boomers. These boomers are still running the show, and the show the fucking train went off the rails and we're down the cliff and we're rolling. And to understand to kind of how we got here, and if you want to look at China and what's going on, you kind of have to look at that generation and dissect, what really went on here for the last 50 years.
Well, yeah, definitely. There was changes in society that have been shaped by the generations that have come before, and as I do think Gen X is probably going to be the short end of the stick. We're going to get bounced over, and it's going to go right to the millennials, mainly because we're going to get beat at our own game to a certain extent. But yeah, to your point, it's just like, what was the guiding principle of I'm not going to say the 70s or like that, but the guiding principle of the 80s was consumerism and greed, and like the great Gordon Gekko said, greed is good. But that's what's allowed everything to kind of fall into place in regards to, where's our manufacturing? Where is power held within the government structure? Where are the strings being pulled to a certain extent? And yes, our choice of how we spend our dollars affects that, and the generation that's been putting money into the economy for a lot longer than we have has guided that. So yeah, it all adds up, of course.
Like I sent Brad a text earlier tonight. I just wanted to read the headline of it. China used more concrete in 3 years than the U.S. used in an entire 20th century. And, when you think about that, that's pretty major, that China would pour more concrete in 3 years than the U.S. did in an entire century. So I think the boomers in this last 50 years, we've been so caught up with just really not being a very productive society at all, caught up in our own narcissism of education and bullshit. Like, it takes 15 years in Canada to approve a pipeline and possibly build it. 15 years. We're talking 10 to approve Trans Mountain. It's still not built. What has China accomplished in 15 years? I think it's built like 5 or 6 fucking cities.
Oh,
so
they
North America has been set up to fail under these boomers. And I mean, I'm not blaming the boomers, but it just seems like this whole system that we're running is so inefficient and just so non-productive that I just can't see how we can swing this around.
Well, it kind of goes back to, we actually talked about, like, not this specifically in the last time we got together, but we kind of talked a little bit about, don't talk about politics at the table, don't talk about, religion at the table and things like that. And that was fed to us, our generation, by our boomer parents. And, and I'm sure a lot of families did the same thing, because we were all worried about other things in our lives. We were worried about indulgences and, all kinds of crazy stuff, right? TV was a big component growing up in everyone's life. What did you do on Friday nights as a kid? You watched TV. You never talked about politics or anything in your life. You probably watched Steve Urkel. And
we're paying the price for that, Brad.
Well, and I agree. My dad listens to this podcast, so he'll be listening to this.
Really?
Like, he figured it out on his iPad. He's you son of a bitch. How dare you blame me for this?
Well, I actually had thrown it to my parents, and my mom was quite intrigued and liked it. My dad heard the first few minutes of over being like basically druggies, and he's right offended. And I'm like, Dad, it's not a direct hit at every boomer. It's a big brush to paint over the entire generation, right? You being in southern Saskatchewan, you're pretty much you're not even really equated to the boomer. I mean, you're in a province of zero influence. So.
Well, and doubling down on the point a little bit in regards to the indulgence and the kind of laziness that comes with that, is like, look at the health epidemic that has taken place. Like, we're talking about political issues, but just look at society. We are fatter, unhealthier. We have more health problems than we ever have in the past, and it's because of that general attitude of indulgence. It's I don't want to postpone my enjoyment. I'm not doing that. Therefore, I don't take care of myself.
Yeah, you're right, Geoff. There's multiple issues, and unfortunately, I think the boomers had a really nice run, and Gen X and millennials kind of have a shit show here.
Well, this generation, and I'm fearful to say that our children's generation, it's funny. I knock Jason Kennedy a lot, and I also praise him for different things, but recently I knock him a lot because he's dropped the ball a little bit. So, to say the least, and I'll admit that. But one thing he did say at the beginning of all this is that the day of reckoning is coming. And a lot of people didn't listen to those words, but the reckoning taxes, for the payback of what this is going to, impact our daily lives, is coming, and it's going to be painful. Maybe not for us, maybe for our children though. And
well, this is an excellent point, Brad, that you just said, day of reckoning. And if we want to quickly touch again on conspiracy, the question is, was it intentional or was it accidental? Because it leads into a really good great reset when you completely cook the system.
Yeah, as I said, it's hard to tell. Obviously, everyone can have an opinion or a theory on why things are going the way they are. I will once again point out government ineptitude typically outweighs government conspiracy. As I said, we elect and we employ people who are really not good at their jobs. So,
but I will say this: the Liberal government has been completely focused on a green agenda. They've implemented their carbon taxes. They've said what they're going to do. They're trying to turn Canada greener faster than
that's
as fast as they possibly can.
That's right.
We're being left in the wake in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba and anywhere that's a God-loving oil-producing province.
And Geoff, I heard you say that on the last podcast, that same sentence. And I would tend to agree with you, but there is a caveat to that, is that the general government that we deal with, the Liberal parties, the Republicans, all the people we see on TV, that's right. But there's a second side to government. I mean, the tech side, the military side, the military industrial complex, that side, we don't have any. I mean, we've got satellites in space. We've got spying software. We've got so many things going on that we have no idea. If you want to just paint the general puppetry of government that we get to see, 100%. Can they get everyone paid through Phoenix and all that bullshit? 100%. But there's a second side to that we have no idea what's going on. And I don't think that you could paint that side with the same brush that you painted. It's just an incompetent mess. It is not an incompetent mess. It's a well-oiled machine, and it definitely knows what it's doing.
Well, I'll push back on the well-oiled machine a little bit. But yeah, no, I pointed out some of those examples in the last podcast. We have CIA acknowledgement of programs to introduce cocaine into the inner city.
That's right.
For the purpose of funding Nicaraguan Contra war. So yeah, no, you're right. There's definitely examples of where the government can pull up their socks and get together. You're right. It's the non-elected crowd that is able to do so.
And that's the power. That's the power crowd. That's the crowd that never really leaves power. We don't see it. Some people call it the deep state. Some people, the hidden hand it's always in power. It never leaves. What that all, we still don't know. But I mean, right back to the Great Reset. I would like to say that if we're going to call the Great Reset a real thing, I'm pretty sure it would be tied to the same group here behind the scenes. Like, the puppetry that we see with Trudeau and all that's just kind of like, it's more like WWE, right? It's just there for us to think that there's a system that's really working.
Well, it gets one side hot and it gets the other side horny, and
it's the illusion of the democracy.
Well, I will. If we're gonna have this episode every 6 weeks, I'm gonna finally go read up on the Great Reset, because I don't have a clue what you guys are alluding to for the most part. And even Brad
it's a great reset, Geoff. It's a great reset. Everybody's talking about it.
Even when I asked you about it last weekend, you're like, "I watched a video with Trudeau. I don't know what it is." I'm like, "So what's going on?" You can't even.
Well, the Great Reset. I mean, it's all over the World Economic Forum. I mean, they have their own commercial. It's not like they're hiding anything from you. They're telling you exactly what they want to do. And you've got Prime Minister Trudeau saying this pandemic is a perfect segue to bring it in. None of that is conspiracy. That's all right there. I mean, you go to the World Economic Forum, they will lay out the agenda. By 2030, they're telling you we don't want anyone to have any private ownership. You won't own any property. It's all there. There's nothing conspiracy about it. It's just like reading a government form. It's all right there.
I didn't say it was a conspiracy. I just said I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it before. So.
I touched on this on the last podcast we had, and I'll maybe just slip it in again. I think at the end of the day, we have to stop talking left, right, conservative, liberal. We have to start talking global government versus democratically elected democracy government that we think we've had up till now. At the end of the day, that is the main topic for everyone to think about. Do you want a global system making all the rules for us? Because that's where we're at right now. Or do you want to allude back to a populist, nationalist, your mayors and your councillors and people that you live among are making your rules? Because if you do, we need to get back over to that side of the tracks. Because right now we're on the tracks of the UN, the WHO, and every big global entity that we have no say with and no elected people. They are now ruling what goes on. Hence our pipelines, hence our healthcare, hence everything that's going on right now is done by unelected people outside of Canada. Trudeau is the poster boy for that world. He is the poster boy.
You need to do a podcast. You need to do a podcast. You can't wait till like summer or spring.
Yeah, I don't think every 6 episodes is going to be doing justice, but I guess then I'll bring it back to the original news story that we were talking about. So is that all the basis of you guys believing that Trudeau is using the RCMP as an enforcement agency against free speech?
Well, if that's real, because you didn't really answer the question. You are like,
oh, I'm going to burn through it in a second. I just want to hear you guys say that you.
Wait, if it's real, because you did point out some pretty, I'm like, maybe that isn't real. But if that's real, yes, that is a government taxpayer-funded police force. Our police force. They're essentially the same as the FBI in the United States. The feds, as Keenan Bexty would say, coming to someone's house and lightly, in the most Canadian way possible, you should probably watch what you're doing.
Well, Geoff, if I could jump in quick, that's a kind of a question that I think there's like, what about the WE scandal? Zero investigation. What about the SNC Lavalin scandal? Zero investigation. The RCMP, at 100% clear to me, is the Trudeau Liberal lapdog. They aren't doing anything to look at Trudeau. He's broken more laws than any prime minister we've had. We've got Chinese over here training with the military. We had CSIS throw an alarm up about that about 5 years ago to us, saying, hey, we got major issues with China coming over here and how involved we are with China. RCMP aren't doing shit. Haven't heard from CSIS. It's a total fucking runaway. And if you're blind to the fact that the RCMP is totally no longer operating in the betterment of Canadians, you're just not paying attention.
All right,
it's just a total write-off. But SNC Lavalin alone is enough for a major RCMP investigation.
Oh, that French pressed coffee you just pressed is kicking in.
Yeah, you're right. There was no criminal investigations, but the Chinese army didn't come over here. The Canadian military shut that down before they came over to train. I know Trudeau wanted them to come over.
Actually, though they did. No, there's a little bit more to that. They did come over and train. They had trained. There's pictures of them running around with snowmobiles and working with and then they were coming over for a second time. And then the news leaked out and everyone was like, oh, this is going to look real bad. Let's shut that down. So you're right. They shut it down, but they had been over here priorly training. And there's actually a bunch of them in Red Deer, Chinese training to fly planes out of the Red Deer small airport. So the Chinese and I just read on the Post Millennial this week that BC Police trained 2,000 Chinese police officers in the last 5 years in Vancouver. So the Chinese have been sending police over to get trained by our Canadian police. The military have been working with the Chinese back and forth, and we're training Chinese how to fly in Red Deer. That's all fact.
Oh,
their invasion plans are being made right now.
But before
you ever see Red Dawn?
Before we get back into the story,
I feel like I'm yelling. Am I yelling? Like, do I seem like I'm yelling?
A little bit
my hair is like back.
A little bit animated.
I feel like I feel like I'm yelling again. It's a podcast. I shouldn't be yelling. I don't know why I get yelling.
Theoretically, if the RCMP is teaching other countries' police officers how to properly conduct an investigation or how to police without human rights violations, is that not a good thing?
No, because they're a communist country.
Hang on, Geoff. Hang on. You walked into another one, bud.
I didn't walk into the first one.
Geoff, China has Muslim Uyghurs in concentration camps. This is documented. Why we don't even need to talk to China? They shouldn't even be in our country. We should pull everything that's Chinese out of here.
Bro, we rely on them. Where do we get?
No, actually, Brad, if you study economics, our GDP versus theirs, if we do more good for them than they do for us. Yeah, the wheat, some of Saskatchewan would hurt, but we could shed China. We will survive. Australia is shedding China. Everyone needs to wake up. China is a disaster. You got the NBA, who's pretty much bought and paid for by China, and they're running around kneeling for BLM, but meanwhile they're cutting organs out of Muslims in a concentration camp. Like, get your shit together, people. Like,
is that true? Because I don't know if that's
that's true. That is true. Yeah, that's well documented, and there's a great documentary you can watch about it. Yeah.
Murphy.
That's what I'm talking about, Brad. China is not up for discussion. China needs to get the fuck out of here.
I was just enlightened. Enlightened today on Those Canadian Lads podcast. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So
there are human rights violations taking place on this planet. It'd be naive.
But that's what I mean, Jeff. Like you say, well, isn't that a good thing? And it's like
I didn't say China.
I know.
I didn't say China.
I know China.
I didn't say China. I said RCMP teaching other countries how to police.
No, that's great. Teaching other countries is great, but my opinion is, if it's China, they're spying on us. I don't know why.
What are they teaching them? How to cut out organs in a concentration camp? Like what are we even talking to that people?
That's the reverse training.
Yeah, like
that's what we're learning.
I think at the end of the day, every citizen in Canada needs to quickly get awoke to China. China is now the Nazis of today. They are. I don't care what anyone says. They are
government. Let's be clear.
Yeah, the CCP. You're right. I will correct myself. The Chinese people are good people. The CCP. In fact, I'm torn. I don't know whether I should join the CCP because I think they've already won. I might just become a member and join them, or else keep fighting them. But either way,
they're gonna listen. They're listening to this podcast as we speak.
That's right.
That actually would be pretty neat.
No, China listenership would go way up.
No, Jeff and Brad, China is I think every day going forward, China is going to become a bigger picture. People need to get dialed in on China.
Beau, I'm not disagreeing with you on the human rights violations and everything that goes on there. I agree with you. There's the human rights violations, the everything that goes on that. Same thing with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's like when you look at the evidence of how they treat their people, there's a great documentary I haven't had a chance to watch about that journalist who got chopped up in the palace. But yeah, should we be doing business with countries that treat their human beings like we would like our human beings to be treated? Yeah, that would be best.
And Iran. They're hanging national heroes, Olympic champions. They're hanging them in the streets to make them example of them.
So
demonstrating against the government.
I'd just like to point one more thing out. So Davos, do you both know what Davos is?
That's in Switzerland, right?
Yeah. Well, Davos is a big conference every year where the world elites come together, the bankers, all the world superpower of banking, business, Apple, the powerful people of the world meet there and talk about stuff. Do you know who the guest opening net speaker is? It's the head of China, the CCP. What's his name? I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
I can't help you out, Beau.
Yeah, no.
I would make it up, but I don't know.
President Xi. They call him Xi.
Yeah.
And he's the guest speaker, the keynote speaker. So you have to, we talk Great Reset, conspiracy, China, all this links up. You got China, who's pretty much basically taken over. He's the lead key speaker at Davos every year. All the big corporates are tied to China. I mean, we didn't even get a chance. You know what? It's 9:24. We're almost probably done our podcast. We didn't even get a chance to talk on big tech, social or censorship, which is a total topic in itself. I mean, we've got major issues with China. Big time.
I want to close it out on this topic because I found it very interesting. Jeff, you're not a big social media guy.
No.
I have been a big social media guy. I'm actually getting disgusted with it just for other reasons other than politics and stuff like that. But Beau, you've actually done something quite interesting. You've turned off a little bit.
Yeah, I did. After Twitter did what they did to Trump and what the censorship, I was so appalled. I totally deleted Twitter. I will not sponsor, be a part of anything like that. I never had a Facebook account. I'm glad I didn't. My Instagram account, I kind of used, it's kind of more of a candy land, looking at stuff that you would like, that kind of gives you enjoyment. I tried to kind of delete
Facebook.
I tried to delete my Instagram kind of quickly and found out that it's not that easy. It's a bit of a procedure. So I took everything off of my Instagram and kind of like took my name and just kind of put like a little flag or something up there. And I just, but I don't interact with it. I don't post on it. I'm kind of so, my principles with big tech right now with the censorship, I'm so offended by what they did that I will do as little as I can to be involved with Twitter, Instagram, like the censorship. I just cannot at all. I don't care if you don't like Trump. To me, that was way over the line. And it was actually a major violation of the Constitution. You can't do that in the United States. You can't censor the president of the United States. So I just don't know. We got big problems ahead, and I just won't, by principle, I will not entertain any of that. If you're a company that's woke, you're not a company for me. I'm not getting woke with a bunch of censorship.
I'm waiting for Geoff to say something.
I don't have it. No, but Beau is. I actually don't disagree with anything he's saying. Quite frankly, I don't believe that Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Parler, whatever you have, I don't think that's the end of the road when it comes to avenues in regards to expressing yourself. So, but at the same time, if you say, hey, I don't like how they're treating people and they're trying to convey a message, this private company doing their thing, hey, I get it. I would walk away from it too. It's Beau is voting with his dollar, which is exactly right. The strength we have as citizens. That's the way you go about it.
Yeah, I think we got to end it on that note because we're coming up on an hour here, and that's yeah.
And I just back to Rebel Media. I don't get any of the extra content. I just give him $8 a month for principle. I like what he does. He deserves my $8. I don't even use the extra content. It's just principle. I'm once again supporting him with my dollar. If I could cancel every penny that went to CBC, I would.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's exactly what the subscription thing is for. That's exactly, you vote with your dollar. It's perfect. I do that before we let Beau go though, because I know it sounds like he passed on the story that we originally started talking to you. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to give a quick second of bursting through this just because I did listen to it again to make sure I wasn't out of my mind. But okay. And I'm going to prefix this with, I have nothing against Rebel Media or anything like that. I haven't read it. It's not fair for me to judge it accordingly. It's a media company that I'm aware of because of its presence and Beau's love of it. So it's fantastic. So here's my problem with the story at hand. And we probably are going to have to introduce this story a little bit better than we did. But okay, first off, I don't actually particularly think the DOD letter is anything nefarious. It is effectively saying that as a military member who went to go compete at the military games, you may have been exposed in October to the Wuhan COVID virus. If the plane, in fact, was quarantined, it was 3 months before the letter came out. So the people who were possibly affected by it had already probably dealt with it, already shown symptoms if they did, in fact, catch it. The guy did say that they were potentially exposed. And then about a minute later in the video says they were definitely exposed and quarantine was required. The cops who showed up at his door, plain clothes, no identification. If a couple strangers showed up at my door and said, hey, we're with the RCMP or EPS, we need to talk to you, I'd be like, all right, well, I need to see your badge or a card or something that identifies you before we're going to have this conversation. If they give me that, I'm posting that all over the damn video. I'm showing badge numbers. I am showing names. Anything else is just unverified, which, as I said, which is a huge hole for me. The other thing is he goes, well, my boss is in Ottawa. Nobody says their boss is in Ottawa. Nobody says my head office is in London, England, or anything like that. You go, yeah, I got a boss in Calgary who dispatches me out here. He's the chief of the RCMP for the area. It's anything else is just complete junk, in my opinion. He also says that, hey, we're talking to you about a particular clause that says that you can't share vital information. We need to ensure that you're not sharing information that could be dangerous to the public, effectively. And he goes, you can Google it. Well, no, if you fucking came in to enforce anything or even mildly, you'd be like, hey, listen, man, clause blah, blah, blah says you need to do this. Also, if I'm going to send the RCMP, I'm sending CSIS. I'm sending somebody who knows what they're talking about. So it's all these things together. I'm just like, all right, he made a good video. Congratulations. It's the end of the day.
Geoff,
I like this because it questions reality. Again, back to conspiracy theory. Did he make it up?
Well, I mean, Geoff put some good holes in it for sure. I think Rebel, I mean, whether every bit of that story is legit for sure is up for question. I wouldn't doubt that, but I don't think Rebel, being that as big as they are, they're not a small little tiny. They're fairly big newscasts. They're in Australia. They're in Europe. They're making a name for themselves. I don't know if Ezra would let his business take, I mean, there's repercussions for completely outright bullshitting. If you're small media, like if you're CBC, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you're not media anyways. You're just talking points.
all you do is print a retraction on page 56 of your newspaper.
Yeah,
but Rebel can do the exact same thing. Anyone can just say on their website, hey, if you scroll down far enough, you'll find our retraction about that story.
But you don't hear from Keenan anymore.
Yeah, but Post Millennial and Rebel and all them, they do they have to remain somewhat of a reputation or they'll fall off the cliff tomorrow. I mean, a couple really bad stories would be the end of Rebel. So, and I mean, I don't think Kean is by any means Rebel's. I've seen lots of Kean's reporting. You either like Kean or you don't. I don't think he's the best face for Rebel. Like Rebel does have
a little bit of a spotty past too, right? Like,
I don't know his past at all. You mentioned that before, Brad, but I would say if you're somebody who doesn't consume Rebel all the time and the first time watching was Kean, I would say probably not their most cleanest reporter.
And it's a lot of sensational shit, right? It's like I've been Hong Kong. I was in the protests in Hong Kong, and I was all this and all these negative things. Like their stories always are attacking stories, right?
The thing I like about Rebel is that they're just giving you the other side. Yeah, there's definitely going to be some stuff there that we can poke at, but we're not really getting any news outside of the post millennial. Like these CBC or CTV, they're just giving us the talking points of what the establishment wants you to know. That's all they're getting. They're not questioning PCR tests. They're not questioning anything. They're just saying, this is what Dr. Tam wants you to do. Like there's no debate. There's no question. There's no journalism running around. Is PCR tests actually really that authentic? Nobody's doing that on the establishment side. It's just like, this is it. This is the story. This is it. And just, that's it. We don't have any journalism. Well, journalism is about going out and finding if there's bullshit from the government side. And we don't have any of that from the mainstream. There is no journalism on that side. The only one that I've seen a little bit from is the Globe and Mail. The Globe and Mail has broke a couple big stories, but I think they quickly get shoveled some cash and they're like, hey, you made your point. No, fuck off. Here's a couple $100,000.
That's where I subscribe. So I do like the Globe and Mail, but
the Globe has broke some stories, but they don't ever, it's like a dog with a bone. Like they just bring it, they throw it on and they kind of let it lay there. They don't do anything with it.
But the point I'm going to make is that I think, as a generality, I just burnt through a story for a reporter I know nothing about by a media source I haven't visited yet. But we should all look at it that way. Rip it apart, dissect it. Doesn't matter where it comes from. Dissect it. Do a little research behind the facts. And if you go do that, you go, hey, by the end of the day, I still found that this article or this story was reputable.
But hey, if I could just touch on that story, now that we've all are clear on what China is and China has been, what were we even doing there, Geoff? That's my question. What were we even doing there in the first place? That's the only question that needs to get asked. What were we even doing there? I don't care about the virus thing. I don't care about what the fuck were we doing there?
Okay, well, that's a topic for another evening.
Yeah, well, I can't wait for the 18th.
Episode 18 of those Canadian lads. Beau's coming fired up.
Yeah. All right, well, we have plenty of things to touch on when Beau comes and visits us again, and we're all looking forward to that, of course. So I think we'll leave it at that for the time being, and we'll be burning up the streets once more with Beau, hopefully sooner than 18.
Bo, thanks for coming on. I think we're always excited to get your insight on things, and we didn't even touch on Saskatchewan a lot. We touched a lot on the communist country of China, but I was enlightened, so that was awesome. But no, thanks for coming on. Looking forward to having you on again, and I think we really got to get some research done on the Great Reset. So thanks again, Bo.
I'll read up on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. I enjoy it, and I'm pumped for the next one.
Oh man, Beau, thanks again for joining those Canadian lads. I think we covered a lot of topics tonight. Geoff, thoughts on our interview with our Saskatchewan correspondent?
Beau from Saskatchewan. No, as once again, thanks for Beau for coming on. It is always great to have him on as a guest. To the dear listener, I'm going to once again remind everybody that on those Canadian lads, we are here to express ourselves. We're here to talk about issues that we think are important, and we're expressing our own opinions. And Brad and I have always kind of hoped to bring that kind of an avenue for that, where we can express what we would like to talk about, thoughts, feelings we have about the world around us. And with any guest, we're going to allow them the same leeway that we've always had. Now, if it went way off the rails, we just won't even hear the podcast, so you wouldn't know any better. But I do think it's important to say that we're here to express ourselves. We're here to talk about things that are important to us. Beau brought up numerous topics that were important to him, and quite frankly, when you're talking about stuff like human rights issues, passion for your own country, concerns about the message in the media, regardless if I disagree or agree, he's expressing himself, and he's doing a pretty good job of doing so.
You know what? The biggest thing too of having conversations, and I've learned this from someone in my life, is that you get the chance to learn about something from someone. And tonight, I honestly did not know about the harvesting of human organs. That's something new to me, and if you guys are saying that's true, that's like monstrous. Like, that's crazy.
Well, and I think you touched on something really important here. We discussed media and where we gather our information, and I can tell from the conversation that I'm going to have to do a little bit of reading up on where Beau is, grabbing his news. I'm not casting judgment on it by any measure because I haven't read any of it, but I think the important thing is if we all gather information from different areas and from different people, and we have these conversations, you do learn quite a bit of what's going on, because not everything's going to reach you. There's not one news source or one friend who can tell you everything you need to know about what's going on in the world. So you have one of these conversations, differences of opinion, expressing, but then there's some things that come along, like we discussed about the harvesting of the organs, and that's legit, and that's a human rights violation. It's something we should be concerned about.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, that honestly, I'm still kind of in shock about that, to be honest with you. Again, I learned something tonight. I did not know that, and I was kind of taken aback with it. And you're right, though, to be able to have a safe space to express your opinions, no judgments, I think is exciting, and I'm looking forward to, is it going to be episode 18? It seems that's going to be the trend when we have Beau back, and we better get well educated on the Great Reset, and see if we can poke holes and or agree with regards to maybe there is a conspiracy theory around that. And like we mentioned in the last podcast, some of these conspiracy theories have ended up being true. Like the topic du jour, UFO, UAP.
Absolutely. I'm not going to let the 666 thing go, obviously, if Beau is going to show up every 6 episodes, so it's going to be fun. but there was something, and we're talking about freedom of expression and an avenue to give opinions and talk about these things. We talked about in generality in public and amongst family and friends, we don't discuss matters of politics and money, and there's those taboo subjects that we shy away from. And depending on the company around you, it might not be a bad idea to kind of consider that. But if you're able to have that opportunity to have that conversation and freely express yourself amongst friends, and it's better for society if we get to all learn about what each other's beliefs are and where we're coming from in regards to what we find is important. or you're always stuck in your own head. And I don't need to listen to little Geoff talk all the time because he's a maniac. So,
You make a great point about that, and it kind of aligns with tomorrow's. I think Bell Media's was it Mental Health Awareness Day,
right.
and this podcast has allowed us to, in one of the darkest times in our generation. We talked about this offline, but an opportunity not to only to learn a little bit about each other. We've known each other for over 20 years, but we're learning new things about each other every day. But also, like you said, get little Brad, get little Geoff out there to talk about things that we care about or we're interested about. And I think, to kind of bring this up is episode 12 of those Canadian Lad podcast. Do you think we would have gotten this far at the start of this? What's your thoughts on how we've progressed and where we've gotten, Jeffrey?
Oh, full name me too, so I got to give my in-depth thoughts on it. No, I'll be honest. We've alluded to it on a previous podcast, but you and I did take a swing at this once before, and for reasons we stopped doing it. One of the main reasons is because I wanted to stop doing it, not because of the fun we were having or the content we were discussing. It's just that in my mind, I had set it aside as something that I didn't have enough value in, and I regret that. Then when we started this again and started toying with the idea of coming back and doing it, to me, I'm like, stop making the excuses for it. You enjoy doing this with somebody you like talking with and somebody you like hanging out with. So I got it back out of my own head and allowed it to happen. But if you had asked me on episode 1, what number are you guys stopping at? It probably wouldn't have been 12 plus, but no, I'm glad we made it this far. This is definitely something that I hope continues going for sure.
I'm really excited for the future for this podcast. I think as we spread our net a little bit, we're getting a lot of positive feedback. Hasn't been many negative feedback from a lot of listeners. It seems like a lot of people have liked the chemistry of what we're talking about and what we're bringing to the table. And hopefully that we get some nice feedback in regards to maybe what people would like us to talk about in the future, get our viewpoints on certain things. And I know for a fact that we'll be bringing in different guests outside of our network and kind of taking a leap of faith into a new kind of realm on the podcast where we're going to talk to people that we generally don't know. And, it'd be kind of interesting to kind of get some different viewpoints on what's going out there in society, if we're crazy, if we're going down the right path, especially around the topics that we love. So
I do wonder if the general listener is listening to us and instead of critiquing us or giving their true thoughts on it, they're like, oh, look at these two puppies eating paste. They'll be dead soon enough.
You know what, though? Okay, so I'll give you some insight on some of the analytics of our podcast. So we have somebody who's listened and downloaded our podcast from the state of Virginia on multiple occasions. So either there's multiple people listening from Virginia or there's somebody out there that truly enjoys listening to our podcast. I don't know anybody from Virginia. I also don't know any of the listeners who are listening to us from Italy. So that is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, news to me. Shout out to Virginia, shout out to Italy. Thanks a lot for listening. I'm shocked to hear it, frankly, but yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think we're going to spread that net a little further here as we kind of roll through 2021 and give you the lads, the Canadian lads, more of us.
Ooh, I think when we have to rebrand, I think you came up with the name there. The lads. It's like the boys on Amazon, but more old fashioned. Yeah. Well, obviously we put together a fairly long one today. Our conversation with Beau was interesting, intense. I think we all, had some good ideas, some good thoughts about how we perceive the world around us. But yeah, I hope everyone who listens thinks similar to what I just said, that it was interesting to listen to.
No, fantastic. And before we take off and close shop on episode 12, I would like your current thoughts on the state of the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh man, obviously the season's not going according to plan. And soon as Mike Smith was hurt before he even played a game, obviously the plan kind of fell apart. I don't believe Koskinen was ever intended to play 8 games straight or whatever he's at now. I will admit that last game against the Jets, they looked decent, and then the wheels came off in the third, I believe. Man, I was dejected. I was like, I walked away from the TV. I went upstairs to do some stretching before getting ready for bed, because that's what I do. I'm an old man. I go stretch to make sure I don't get hurt when I get into bed. But I had to be truthful, I turned it back on. But man, I was like, I'm not watching this. This is too much for me. And yourself?
Oh, I was waiting for you to respond.
I thought you were just gonna go with it. I can see you nodding.
You know what? I had put both feet back, planted them hard back into the bandwagon. I currently am dragging one foot outside the wagon currently, and I'm waiting for them to show me a little bit more defensive play. Would be nice. They need to support their goaltender. It's not Koskinen's fault. Essentially, I think he's kept them in a lot of games. The third and fourth line shit the bed yesterday. In the game. It's currently January 29th, 2021. They played the Winnipeg Jets last night. They gave up 3 goals with a span of 3 minutes, and it was all the fault of their third and fourth lines, in my opinion. And, McDavid scored late to make it 5-4. Too little too late. You can't do that every night in the North Division now. The games are too tight. The games are too important. This team hasn't even taken a game in the first 8 games into an overtime game. There hasn't been even the extra point situation. So they better dig themselves out of a hole really quick. I'm not jumping off the bandwagon. I'm a diehard. But I was dejected the same way as you are. But I will be watching tomorrow night and every second night as they play. But tomorrow night they're taking on the mighty Toronto Maple Leafs, who just riled up Matthew Tkachuk. And I'm excited to see some of these rivalries start get heated. And plus, we haven't even played we played the Flames 10 times. I think we played the Canucks another 8 times. There's a lot of season left, but they got to get their poop in a group and get things moving.
Before we jump off, we briefly discussed the Tkachuk incident in Toronto, a quote unquote incident, depending on what side of the fence you're on. What are your thoughts on him coming down on Campbell there?
He's a dirtbag. That's complete gamesmanship on his part. He wasn't going to hurt the guy. People are overreacting a little bit, but he's going to get tuned up hard one of these days. Somebody's just going to dummy him and just bloody him up a little bit. I don't know if that'll affect him. I think his just DNA is wired that way. I think he just wants to play like a dickhead and is a dickhead when he's out there on the ice. So I don't think you change that. And to be honest with you, we missed out on him. He almost became an Oiler. So we have Jesse Puljujarvi, who's starting to show some worth here now. So I'm okay with that. But guys like Brad Marchand and guys like Matthew Tkachuk, we'd kill to have them on our teams, but I just hope it's an Oiler who tunes him up. I hope Darnell grabs him one night and rearranges his face, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm not too proud to admit that if he had slid or they had grabbed him at that third spot, I'd probably have a Tkachuk jersey, because that's the kind of guy I like too. So. Oh, totally. Totally. Yeah, no, I thought it was gamesmanship as well. I think he had planned that. Any other story of it is off, but no, obviously 10 more games against them. You're right. The season is still young, plenty of time to bounce back. And quite frankly, too, it's just much like any other regular season, you don't have to be hot at the beginning. You just have to be not out of it. You can get hot at the end and sail into the playoffs and catch a wave. So hopefully that's the master plan.
Well, you know what, Jeff? The best part of the week is podcast night for me. It's we generally record these on Wednesday nights. I thoroughly enjoy our opportunity to not only sit down and chat with each other, but we brought in some interesting people so far over the past 12 episodes now. So on that note, I want to say thank you, and let's keep it rolling.
Excellent. I am totally in. Thank you very much for tuning in, and everyone, have a wonderful evening.